Hello everybody, my name is Joshua and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Coffee, Cats, and King, where we will discuss books, both new and old. I will share with you pictures of my cats who will make you wish they were your cats, and I will drink enough coffee for me and everybody watching. The mug today is a Punisher mug given to me by one of my brothers. It's a birthday present a while back. I am here today with a very special book review. This is special because this is the first instance since starting my channel that an author has reached out to me and requested that I review his book. So, today we're going to talk about The Arcadian Destiny by Mr. S.C. Vincent. And as you might guess from the title and from the lovely cover, this is a fantasy. It's a very traditional fantasy. It's rather long. I don't have an actual page count on it, but it's something like 125,000 words, which is long in most realms. In fantasy, that's somehow normal, which is pretty crazy. But right. So, what is this book about? This book is about Prince Connor. Prince Connor is trying his hardest to prevent a war between him and the Pesian Empire. And the only way he's going to be able to do this is to marry the Emperor's daughter. The issue here being that Prince Connor is in love with a baker's daughter. And he has this sort of secret tryst, this secret affair going on the side. And as we all know from reading fantasy, a prince and a pauper can never be together. So, aside from that, we have Prince Connor's sister, Gwynethel. And Gwynethel is evil incarnate, okay? I'm not spoiling anything. We know this right from the bat. In fact, the book starts off with a very dramatic scene of the queen giving birth to Gwynethel. The queen dies in childbirth, and then little baby Gwynethel bursts into flames. Why does she burst into flames? Well, read the book and you might find out. But, point being, this is now much later. Gwynethel has grown up to be a miserable, horrible person. She, of course, kind of masks this, but not really very well. Everyone, is pretty afraid of her, and for good reason, as we'll learn later in the book. So, she obviously has her own agenda. Prince Connor is desperately trying to stop this war before it begins, while still holding on to this woman that he knows he cannot have. And that's where things kind of take off. So, what do I have to say about this book? First of all, I gave it 3 stars. It was good. It was good. The main issues that I had, some of the issues you hear me talk about a lot. One, it needed editing. Definitely needed editing, especially for how long the book is. I feel like if someone had been able to jump in and do a little editing, a little proofreading, it could have been so much better. Some of the other problems that I ran into, the author definitely went for a more archaic style of writing, and that's fine. We see that a lot in fantasy, but there were instances where it felt so forced that the dialogue just became stilted, or the scene itself, you kind of lost interest a bit because you had to stop and say, okay, hold on, what are they trying to say here, And I've run into that in the fantasy quite a few times in the past, but it was prevalent here, and so I just feel like I need to mention it. Another issue I had is that things were very basic, very much fantasy trope after fantasy trope. A person who is good is very good. A person who is evil is very evil. We know these things. We kind of know a lot of what's going to happen. There are some twists along the way, but if you've read fantasy before, you're probably going to recognize them before they occur. That said, I still think that this is a very good fantasy for someone who is just getting into the genre, because it uses all of these traditional fantasy tropes and So it's a good way to introduce a new fantasy reader to the genre without overwhelming them all at once. So the book does not shy away from violence, but these fantasy worlds are often very violent. I mean, we said there's a war that's about to occur. There are monsters and villains and wizards and evil, all around them, and terrible things happening. And so S.C. Vincent really tries to put a focus on that and make it as realistic as possible. In ways he succeeds. I think, like I said, this would be great for someone who's just getting into the genre, because it's going to introduce them to a lot of things that they're going to see in other fantasy novels. So overall, it's a simple read, and I think a good one for a beginner in fantasy. For me, I've read a bit more fantasy, and I kind of found myself rolling my eyes here and there, because I knew what was going to happen before it happened. Sometimes the characters came off a little over the top, but overall, it was a decent read. I think Prince Connor is certainly not at the level of, say, Kaladin or anything like that, but he tries. Overall, I think the characterization, while a bit over the top, was still good. Like I said, it's just a very traditional fantasy. It is the author's first book, and so keeping that in mind, I think he did an excellent job. Like I said, I hope that at some point maybe he does a revised edition, has someone go through, do a little proofreading, a little editing, take out some parts where things maybe get a little overlong, or unnecessarily detailed perhaps. But overall, I enjoyed it. I think it's a great starting place for someone in the fantasy realm, and I gave it 3 stars. So there you go. I want to thank Mr. S.C. Vincent for the opportunity to read this. I apologize that it's a little late, but I'm getting it out there. I hope that you will continue writing in the future, and that I can hopefully have you on here one day to talk about your next book. So thank you guys. I'm going to go on and throw some cat footage in, because I know you've been craving it. So enjoy. And there you have it. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be back with another book review very soon. Have a wonderful weekend, guys. Cheers.